I'd like to begin by thanking Chairman Lucas for convening this hearing and our witnesses for appearing before us today. I'm a meteorologist and also the proud son of an aerospace engineer who is a contractor supporting the Space Shuttle program. I have a visceral memory of the loss of Challenger and her crew. After the Challenger disaster, I didn't see my dad for several days. My dad worked for Sunstrand in Rockford, Illinois, a city that I now represent. Sunstrand was a contractor on the Challenger project, and after the disaster, my dad and his colleagues spent days determining if the O-rings that they produced for a mission were on that shuttle, and they were not. With that indelible imprint from my childhood, I'm very interested in knowing what can be done to continually improve safety for those explorers and those heroes. As the committee that leads our government's R&D efforts, we have an obligation to ensure space flight safety. Ms. Dries, can you speak to what agency, such as the FAA's Office for Commercial Space Transportation, are doing on R&D to support commercial human space flight safety? And are there other areas of R&D that would enable continued safety advances in commercial human spaceflight?
Thank you so much for that question, Congressman Sorensen. I completely agree with you that safety is by far the most important aspect of the entire industry, and every single one of our members, as far as I know, believes that as well, which is why we're working so hard to ensure that we maintain the perfect safety record that we have with commercial human spaceflight. You mentioned the shuttle program, and yes, our members and myself obviously agree with those tragedies were very difficult for every single American, and especially myself and folks in my generation growing up in that era. It wasn't so much the Apollo program for us, it was the shuttle program that was so impactful for my generation. The challenge that we have on a regular basis with respect to safety is we want to be able to innovate our vehicles to ensure those things don't happen, which is exactly what we're doing. So the challenge is if we start developing that regulatory environment too soon, before we have enough data, before we have enough knowledge of those individual vehicles, there is a long-term safety risk that something could go wrong. The purpose of continuing to innovate while we develop these standards side by side with the regulator will allow us to have the most safe vehicles on the market in the future.
I appreciate that. Instead of learning from our mistakes, we need to make sure that we're using science to not make the mistakes in the first place. To Dr. Kohler, we recently lived through the harrowing incident of the OceanGate Titan submersible and the rescue campaign that was undertaken. As we see the rapid evolution of commercial space activities, what do we know about contingencies for on-orbit human safety and in-space rescue, which will be even more challenging than was done for Titan? And who would be responsible for that?
That is a very important question. Thank you for asking that. Often people make comparisons and also call it apples and oranges. What's similar is that similar clientele, similar price range, informed consent. But when it comes to in-space rescue, comparing it to the OceanGate tragedy, what's really important to understand is, do we have the capabilities, the authorities, and the environment in place to actually rescue somebody from space? For the OceanGate tragedy, the Coast Guard immediately, and not just from the United States, from other nations, rushed to rescue and spend enormous amount of effort trying to find the submersible. We do not have anything in place for in-space rescue. We have no strategy in place. We have no capabilities. And I think we need to start now to learn from examples like the submersible and submarine rescue and from the past and what capabilities need to be put into place, but also answer the question on who pays for what efforts, and because is it a humanitarian effort to rescue somebody in space? And so all these questions still need to be answered.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chairman, I yield back.